Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McKusick, and we're back for part 2 of our discussion of the offense in this game against the Bengals. Very frustrating game, obviously, for the Ravens. Most of that frustration occurring on the offensive side. We had a great discussion in the first half with a new guest, Jacob Abuspatan. Do I have the pronunciation of that name correct?
Yeah, it's about as good as you can get it.
I appreciate that, Jacob. And thanks for giving me a little bit of leeway. But met Jacob on Reddit, fan with a lot of very interesting ideas, good community over there that I'd highly recommend as well if you want to go talk football somewhere. But we talked about a lot of things, Jacob, in the first one. Probably the biggest thing from my point of view was looking through Lamar's the 10 throws he left on the field in this game. A stunningly high number, particularly for only 35 total throws, where he didn't complete a pass with either ample time and space or ball out quick.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a big issue this game. I mean, we were off. We're going to talk about the line later. We're very critical of them through the year. I mean, they have struggled, so we really want to make sure that we're taking opportunity to pretty much get those opportunities into points when they do have opportunities that are good. So it's definitely disappointing to see not taking advantage of that. But for the most part, when we talk about them, I thought the line, like you said in the last episode, did overall all right. And it is unfortunate we weren't able to take advantage of it. It was a little bit of a weird game for Jackson. But for the most part, kind of telling of how the game ended up the way that it did.
Yeah, very much so. We have a few things we want to get forward to that we normally include in the first episode because we'd start this out with offensive line right away. But we had a question come in from Chef Monk who says, why do you think Rasheen Ali, who's had 6 touches on the season, led the backfield in snap count this week? The answer to that's actually pretty simple. Ali was in there as the designated pass blocker with Hill out. And so he was in there on third downs, and he did a great job pass blocking in this game. Still getting a little bit of feedback from you, Jacob, just for what that's worth. So I thought that was one thing from Ali that was not wholly unexpected. And so I do expect that Ali will be the guy going forward after a game like this. He had 3 set blocks and 5 chip blocks. A couple of those are just absolutely bodacious, rib-breaking chip blocks he had. We would love to see that repeated week after week. So whatever fear I had about Ali being a good enough blocker, a pass blocker from his college days, I'm willing to set that aside now. I'm excited to see what Rasheen Ali brings to the third down offense going forward. He had only 4 touches in the game, by the way, so it's not like he's getting a lot of the touches for these snaps. So he ran the ball 4 times, I think it was in total, and 3 of those were on the last 3 plays of the game where they were just running the clock out. Anything else, Jacob, about Ali's usage that struck you?
Yeah, I agree with you, especially with Hill out. We know we need that designated pass set back, and it is great to see him really be able to contribute to the pass blocking. As I said in the last episode, for the most part, our tackles do end up in situations where they're out there on their own. It's great that they can get support based on the pass pro packages that we're getting, and more importantly, it didn't necessarily come to fruition of anything coming out of it, but it was great just to see Ali put out on the bound, having those running backs move around a little bit. I know people have concerns with someone being in there other than Henry. Obviously, Henry's an amazing back, but we did very briefly talk about it. He just, for whatever reason, as big as he is, doesn't quite have that pass blocking ability that some of the other running backs on the roster have. So it does make sense. Jackson ended up with over 30 attempts in the game. So him being out there isn't really that head scratching. But it's good to see that he, at least was able to earn those snaps in the role that he was given.
Yeah, game script really determined the fact that the Ravens are going to have a fairly heavy pass to run balance in this game. They got behind early. They were coming back for a lot of the second half. It was not aside from the turnovers, they moved the ball well through the air, which is aside from the fact that this girl, doesn't have a whatever, and she has a great personality. It really is a game where they had to pass the ball to come back. Section 523 had a related question. Ken, how meaningful do you think the loss of Hill was from a pass protection standpoint. I wonder if it impacted Lamar's confidence and timing, especially against blitzes.
So I mean, we talked about it. There's plenty of ample time to throw, so it wasn't necessarily the factor. I think we can look at the game and kind of see if anything, there be a buildup of non-decisiveness from Lamar through the game. But I think that was an isolated incident throughout this game. I don't think it necessarily was attributed to Hill not being out there, especially considering the performance that Ollie did in that role.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, Hill, I think Hill's very undervalued though. On the other hand, I mean, he's great out of the backfield. Ollie maybe didn't necessarily present that ability. We didn't see that play out too much, so it's really hard to say. But I mean, if you want to answer the question directly, maybe yes. Hill not being out there and to get the passes could be contributing to it.
I'm going to go ahead and say this about this game. I don't think it was a factor in this game. I thought Ricard was out there for 4 set blocks, and he was a brick wall in terms of blocking. Ali had 8 contributions to pass blocking. He was fine. In fact, the only eligible receiver who gave up anything in terms of pressure or intrusion on the cone and whatnot was likely on the one play that got tipped for the interception. So, I don't think it was the running backs. Let's put it that way in this game. Henry had 2, he blocked twice and looked good on both times. Once a set, once a chip, as far as I'm concerned. So I thought that was also positive. So I think it's a legitimate concern for another game. And if things were going wrong for the running backs on a more generalized basis in a game, that I think it'd be fair to ask this question in this game. I just don't think it was the problem in this particular game.
Yeah, I think actually talking about likely and his contribution to that pressure and then the eventual interception. We'll probably touch base on it more later when we talk more in depth about the line. But I really have struggled with um, the trench blocking in general, and that does actually tie into with the tight ends. Andrew, for the most part, has been pretty solid. Kohler, I feel for the most part, has been pretty good as well. Oddly likely, when he first came in, he started off as a fairly decent run blocker, and that seems to really tailored off over the last few years. I don't know if he's been more dedicated to his ability to be a receiver, and he's kind of focusing on that. But I said the last episode that I'm kind of biased with the line, and a big part of the things that I see, or at least I feel, they're not getting a lot of help on the edges on those blocks. Even though it's not always fair to ask the tight ends to make those blocks, you still need to have that happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. And that is scheme, generally speaking, because you give away something in the passing game whenever you have any eligible receiver make a chip block, even if they are going out. It limits the number of routes that they then can do. So, another place for help is looking for help off the guard bubble. Whichever guard, in a 4-man pass rush, one of the 2 guards, generally speaking, is not covered. That side is termed as having a guard bubble. That guard, after making his various checks for, is there a blitzer, is there a stunt, does my inside guy have help, because you got to start from that side, then has to move out and get the tackle. And I think that if anything, the Ravens have been a lot later this year with those than we've seen from Marshall Yanda in his prime. Let's put it that way. I know that's a completely unfair comparison, but it hasn't always been the greatest in terms of guards going out and getting the midsection of whoever the tackle is blocking. All right, how about we go over the line from left to right here, and I want to start off with a kind of a holistic comment about the line, and then we have some questions we need to get to, and I want to make sure you get those interjected as needed here. But Lamar was sacked 3 times in this game. He didn't run the line out of any pressures, but also one of the sacks was with ample time and space. It was actually the play where he grounded the football by tuck rule, but not tuck rule apparently, because it was ruled a sack fumble -5, and obviously a bad situation, but it was what it was. They had 5 different pressure events that were a result of overloads and free runners. So there were a lot of the bad things that happened to Lamar in the pocket, and they did have a lot of total pressure plays, were not really the fault of the offensive line directly. The offensive line actually had a pretty good game. They were only responsible for one of the 3 sacks in total. And it was generally speaking, I'd say a pretty good game for the offensive line, and that'll be reflected in the grades as we get to them.
Yeah, I think that overall, again, the line had a decent game. A big part of that, if we're being objective, is that the pressure just wasn't quite there as far as numbers outside of those disguises and designed plays. As we said, we gave credit to Cincinnati's coordinator last episode, just that they got creative. Um, with that bubble, though, I actually feel like I can't say it any more than like anecdotally, but it seems like the last few weeks, Filali's really been a little bit more aggressive about picking up blocks and a little more um, willing to find work. That's been one of the biggest kind of points of contention for people on him. It seems like he's had to do that bubble a little bit less. It seems like they're putting more of that on with Voorhees and Lindy together. And because of that, he's getting put in a lot of more of like one-on-one situations, but seems like it's kind of like helped his development a little bit at least. But yeah, overall, great job by the line, and all things considered, I mean, you can always ask for more. It's never unreasonable, but I agree. I mean, they had a solid game. I probably wish they could have done a little more in the run game as far as creating movement on the line of scrimmage, but for the most part, they did a decent job. Jones came in. He was, I want to say, a mixed bag in my opinion, not in the sense that he did anything terrible. But what I like about Jones is his technique was solid. It's a good place to start. And I'm a big believer, if we're talking in general too, I'm just a big believer in win pass with linemen. Your grading's a little more in depth. I like the win loss ratio as a kind of like head on thing, though. That's just kind of how I look at it. And we can talk more about that later.
Okay. Well, let's jump into some of these linemen individually and really hit up on some of the questions, because I know this was a source of a lot of the mailbag this week. So we had a question, really a question is too long for me to read on air, but Ecstatic Contest 160 Reddit guy said, Ken, can you talk about the O-line elevations and snap counts versus the Bengals? We'll get into every single one, I promise. He's very interested in how Emory Jones looked. He had a really good question in the middle of this about why Vincent was not elevated, why Vincent seems to have lost his place back to Noteboom again. I don't know. I have a good reason for that, because Vincent was 2 weeks in a row. He was the guy who was active, and Noteboom was not. Noteboom did not have any sort of injury designation during that point. Can you think of any reason why?
I mean, I can probably, if I take a second to really think about it, but I'm not a fan of Noteboom. Nothing against him, of course, but I know a lot of folks like using, Pro Football Focus, a lot of these different resources, and um, he, like I said, if you're looking at like our line averages, he's a big anchor, and not in a good way, on those statistics. Because when he was in for Stanley, and don't get me wrong, I mean, especially against the Browns, Garrett ate Stanley's lunch, the 2 games that they played. But Noteboom, I'm amazed that he, at least from what I've seen, has really gotten the looks that he's gotten at to this point. Yeah, it's probably it's shades of Villanueva, or however you said, back when we had Villa. But as far as the elevations, I don't know a lot about Vincent, honestly. As far as him being brought in instead, I kind of wonder, if they want to try some different packages, at some point. I'd love to see, personally, I'd love to see some more 6 front packages. Let's go ahead and get a little bit heavier on the front, and let us kind of make a decision of point attack or zone type plays. But specifically why they bring up Notabune over Vincent, I have no idea. Like, it's
Okay.
I can't. He's not a player, and I'll vouch for Falale. So it's not a player I vouch for, which is, to me, says a lot.
Okay, well, it's fair enough. We appreciate your question, Ecstatic Contest 160. Other questions about Emory Jones. came from Keldrick View, who wanted to know how I fare with. I promise you we'll get into that. Band of the Red Hand. Considering Voorhees' play so far and the fact that he's still under team control, is it more surprising that Emory Jones replaced or rotated with Voorhees than with Faalele? I actually think I am a little bit surprised about that. Doesn't really necessarily have to do with the play of either two player specifically. It's more of the stylistic fit that I thought Jones was for being a right guard as opposed to right tackle. He's a very long guy, and he certainly has the ability and the strength to turn that defensive tackle the way he would like to open the front gate. It's not that I don't know enough about his mobility to know, other than he played tackle in college. I don't know enough about his mobility to know if he would be acceptable in terms of a pulling guard.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm going on a limb. It makes sense that really Jones filling in for Voorhees is as much of a evaluation of Voorhees as it is of Jones. There's a real possibility. Lindy and Felly are both free agents coming up, and there is a possibility that based on his play, they might not keep Falale. And there's based on his play this year, Lindy's built a reputation for himself, but it's been a rough year for him overall. So I actually think that Jones going in for Voorhees is a litmus test of how does the line look? Is Voorhees struggling on his own? How does he fit into this? So I really do think it's as much of a evaluation of him as it is Jones himself. Now, as far as not taking snaps from Falale, I think it may eventually happen. This is kind of where I was talking about that pass, win and pass for me. So if you win your block, I don't care what it looks like at the end of the day. I mean,
Right.
I'll be the first one to tell you that one of the biggest knocks on Falale is that he has pretty bad mechanics. I mean, his hands are outside very often. His footwork's not great. Very much struggles to the second level, but just due to sheer size and oftentimes strength, he does still end up winning his one-on-one blocks and creates at least enough ample space for the play to happen. That's not always the case with Voorhees. Voorhees being a little bit smaller, and to a degree. I mean, obviously, almost everyone's smaller than Falele, but Voorhees, I would say, on a regular basis, does struggle more in the sense that he's just not getting his head on the right side. He's allowing the defender's leverage that he really shouldn't be allowing to have. Where unfortunately with Falale, he's a meme worthy guy who when he fails. So
Right, that's exactly
kind
what
of
it
plays
is.
into that.
And I'm definitely opinion. I don't even really care if he gets pancaked and he wins the block, which that
Yeah.
does happen occasionally. It occasionally happens where you allow pressure and you pancake someone into the cone too. Is the other way that can happen. That's not good. Anyway, we need to go through these players individually because this segment always takes quite a while, and I want to make sure we leave time for skill position. So I'm just going to go ahead and run right into it with Ronnie Stanley here. 55 plays, he made 48 of his blocks. He missed 3, allowed 2.5 pressures, and 1/3 of a sack. The one sack where the pocket got really phone booth, it was part Falele, it was part Rosengarten, it was part Stanley. They all had an element of it. It was very close to a third share for each, so that's what I called it in this. His raw score is 75. I gave an adjustment that brings him up to an 81, a B for the game. Mostly he was facing a Sai. I thought he did a good job. We didn't see a lot of mobility from Stanley in this game, but he probably did a little bit better job of some slow deaths and some just keeping his guy outside the pocket enough. Didn't have a great pass blocking game. But he did have a good. We're going to have to go to a mute you when you're not talking because we're getting a lot of feedback on the line here. Sorry about that. Anyway, B for Stanley for the game. 4 level 2 blocks, 1 pancake, no pulls or highlights in the game. It's his 3rd best game of the year. So if we could get this out of Stanley every game the rest of the year, I'd be very excited. It was right at the bottom of the B range, but still very good. And frankly, it's been a tough year for Stanley, and he doesn't. Sometimes it's not look like he's not completely healthy. Other years it looks like he's just getting a little older, and he's had a little more trouble. So hopefully he's back and playing at this level even for the rest of the year would be terrific.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I mean, he for the most part, I was attributing the beginning of the season maybe to health, but I think he's getting a little bit older at this point. The mobility isn't quite the same. I mean, he's still winning. He's still winning a lot of times at the point of attack in the run game, and then he's still getting decent pass blocking. But he definitely hasn't been that premier guy that he's shown flashes of. Unfortunately, I mean, he just this game. I'm on the same page. I mean, I feel B's very reasonable because he did his job. You know, he didn't create extra space necessarily, and he didn't really keep the pocket completely clean. I mean, he didn't allow much pressure, but he still was getting pushed back a bit. So decent game overall, but I think you're on the right track. It's just he's getting older.
All right, moving over to Andrew Voorhees. I'll go through the scoring on him pretty quickly. 41 plays. Now, Voorhees had a good game for not missing blocks, particularly in the run game. So he allowed one pressure. He only had two other missed blocks. And I charged him with half of that false start. I think he and Rosengard, I've looked at the play 5 times, maybe or more, both move at exactly the same time, basically. There might have been a slight rock first. I think they're both basically reacting at the same time to Murphy being in the neutral zone. Take a look at it, see how you feel about it. And by the way, if you feel like it should have been Voorhees getting the whole false start, it would have cost him 1 point and it wouldn't have changed his grade either way. He got a B and he's at the high end. Not, yeah, he's at the very high end of the B range, actually, at 88. So a good game from him. And one thing that's been interesting about Voorhees recently, we had questions about the guard mobility. And this is one of the real questions why I'm wondering, maybe they want to see Jones at both spots, at left guard and right guard. And this game, they just decided left guard was going to be it. The one thing that Voorhees has been very good at the whole year has been making his pulls. And he's now, I think he's made 26 of his last 27. Maybe it's 25 out of 26. But that's the order. I know I had it in the offensive line article. So if you take a look at that'll have the correct number in there. But he only has missed one since week 5, I believe it is. So he's on quite a run of that, and it shows up. I mean, you notice him; he's squaring up his pulls very well. He kind of knows how to take smaller steps and get there.
Yeah, I mean, with Voorhees, again, his biggest issue to me at least through the whole year has really just been that leverage. I mean, one of the reasons he's probably great on pulling, I do feel like he's a fairly mobile guard. So I mean, getting around to those pulls makes sense that he's been pretty successful. One of the biggest reasons being is when you're doing those pull blocks, you oftentimes are getting an opportunity that the lineman is squared up to you, and basically they have to face towards where the ball is, so they're giving you an ample blocking space. Now a lot of times they may give you a shoulder if that's the responsibility that they're given, but he's just really struggled on creating his own leverage. So if we're talking about a run to the outside that maybe is like a stretch play, he's had a lot of issues getting his hips around and really positioning himself. So I can see him being a great open space guard. He's just really had problems when he's covered, and I don't know. Like he's a plenty big dude. So like I said, that's something I'm hoping that they can teach up in him.
Yeah, I think obviously he was drafted in part for his remarkable bench outing, 38 bench reps at the combine when he had his knee already injured at that point. So it was a remarkable effort. He's got the wonderful strength you want. He just doesn't have the right build for a guard. He's a tall, leaner guy. Normally the kind of guy you would see playing tackle, except his arms aren't long enough to play tackle. And that does give him a lot of problems in leverage. If the combination of lean and short arm is a really bad combination for letting other players get under your pads. Think what Kyle Hamilton would do to this, but let alone somebody like Ted Hendricks or Calais Campbell, any of the interior guys who could roll over a guard with shorter arms and who plays a little bit high. That has been a problem, and he doesn't really re-anchor all that well as a pass blocker, which has generally been a problem. So I agree with your comments entirely. Letting alone the run thing, I think that's the most correctable part of his game. Whereas learning how to anchor as a pass protector and doing the additional things he needs, that's a long journey for a player with his attributes. All right. Oh, let's move on. We'll talk about the Tyler Linderbaum a little bit. One of Tyler Linderbaum's best games of the year. He missed 3 blocks. He didn't have any other negative events of any sort. .94 was his raw score. It's an A with or without adjustment. Had 4 blocks in level 2, made both of his polls, had a highlight combination block. There's not a lot more he can do to play well. And the good news is Tyler's now had 4 A's in his last 6 games. The bad news is that in his last 8 games, in addition to those 4 A's, he's had 2 D's and 2 F's. So he's been a D plus and a D and 2 F's. He's been highly variable week to week. I always say when I score offensive line play, that's a normal thing that I kind of expect. And unless you're Marshall Yanda and kind of like rarely make a mistake, and he would show up always. Well, okay, not always. I'd say 8 games out of 10, he'd show up in the A or B range. And it's really rare that you get a C. In the case of Linderbaum, his pass blocking is just somewhat suspect still. He's a guy who has trouble with bigger men. This happened to be a game where he didn't really face that directly. And that was a good break for him. And in particular, he didn't face it with a lot of single teams because the Bengals came with primarily a 4-man rush.
Yeah, Lindy, I mean, my biggest concern with Linderbaum this year, obviously, has been his ability in the passing game, and I know a lot of times folks are attributing that to him needing to help the guards, but ironically, in those pass sets, we talked about the bubble earlier. He's really the one that a lot of times is getting that extra hand, when you're dropping back into pass pro. A lot of the other stuff I see, though, I mean, I've talked about a lot of this on the Reddit forums. Is I can't. He's still graded highly in the run game, but I'm still seeing. I don't want to say often. Often's not a fair word. I'm seeing it happen enough to be noticeable, where he's just not. What he does and what the rest of the line doesn't line up with what a expected scheme would do. So I mean, you'll have something like where half the line looks like they're trying to do a zone, and he's trying to essentially allow his guard to combo up to the next level, and for whatever reason, they're not blocking it the right way. The guard has outside leverage, and Lindy's supposed to be able to swing his hips around, and for some reason he'll just push off of him and then try to go to the guard, or excuse me, try to go to the second level, and then the guard seems to be doing the same thing. So I do question Lindy's struggles this year with potentially a drop back in position coaching. It's just hard to look at him from previous years versus this year. Again, especially in the run games, that's what he's been so great at. And seeing him making really weird mistakes sometimes, or things that may be accredited mistakes that don't really seem to make sense. There was one play when the team was on like the 2 or 3 yard line. We were backed up in our own end zone, and Linderbaum made a step right in order to essentially do a cutoff block as if the ball was going to the right side, and then the entire left side of the line made a pretty much a hop step to the left, and that's where the ball ended up going. So it's just he was completely blocking to the opposite side of what the play was called. And again, it's just I'm not sure how much of that communication amongst the linemen, well, that's coaching, and or maybe he is making mistakes. It doesn't match up with his previous years of experience.
Right. Well, that's a good point. I mean, he gets stood up from time to time, which is something that you kind of expect. If he has trouble pass blocking, he's going to get stood up occasionally as a run blocker too. Get backed up oftentimes when he gets stood up, that's common for it happens to all linemen. I'll just say that, and it's going to happen probably a little bit more to Linderbaum. The only thing I've had a problem with him as a run blocker in general is that I think more than others, when it's his job to climb, he's too quick to release into level 2. And it's where a lot of his value is, but when he's to be too quick to release generally means you don't have the player at the line of scrimmage off on one pin, off his balance, such that the trailing lineman can finish that guy like nobody's business. You get him up on one leg, any kind of leverage imbalance or whatnot, that guard, whether it's Falele or Voorhees, should be able to roll him right over and move him 5 yards. That's not what I generally see from Linderbaum. I see him at times doing What I really associate more with pass blocking is that, he tries to give a hard pop to the ribs to that guy and move to level 2 too quickly. It's not that that can never be effective. It's just not the normal way that you create a real opportunity for the guard next to you. And that's been a problem that I've commented on several times on this show about Linderbaum's run blocking that I don't like. I still think he's a very good run blocker. Don't get me wrong. He's lines up guys very well in level 2. He's quick as anybody in terms of the offensive lineman, in terms of getting downfield. But that would be one problem I've had. He had a good game though this week. This is a time to celebrate Tyler Linderbaum here with a nice A game. It hasn't been a perfect year, but it's certainly a year where every one of these 5 remaining games is going to mean something for how much money he puts away come next spring. So it's a good time for him to play the best football of his life, and whether it's with the Ravens or with someone else, I'm sure he'll get paid for it. All right, we'll move on and talk about Falele here. And I know we're having some problems with Jacob's mic, so I'm going to move this along myself here. Falele, a good game overall. Well, not a bad game anyway. 56 plays, 50 blocks. He had, let's see, 2 pressures allowed. It was 1 plus 2 times a half. He allowed 1 quarterback hit and a third of a sack. So he was involved in 5 different pressure events. Most of what happened to Falele that was bad in this game is pass blocking. Most of what happened that was good with Falele is run blocking, and that is completely the opposite from what we have typically seen from Daniel Falele. So anyway, had 5 level 2 blocks, and that was, I think he went 5 for 5 in level 2. He had 3 out of 3 pulls. Have you heard anything on Falele like so far? Because Falele is not a guy who hits on a high percentage of his polls, or has not so far this year. Had 1 pancake and 2 highlights. It grades out as only a C minus, but I look at the decisiveness that I think you commented about earlier, Jacob, and I look at that as a big positive for Falele.
Yeah, no, I mean that's been a huge difference in the last, really, to me, 3 weeks. And it's just he's really taken the next step, at least for having that aggression and decisiveness. The rest of the stuff, I mean, whether he moves on, he stays here, whatever they decide to do, those are things that can really come along as long as he's willing to have that effort play that he doesn't always seem to have. And again, I don't think it's literally effort. It's just he didn't quite seem to be overthinking things quite as much of the last few weeks as he does previously. He's oftentimes just kind of looking around for work, but not really acting on it. And now, I mean, whether it's right or wrong, he seems to be at least making a decision right now.
Yeah, and you give yourself a chance to make the right decision if you do it. They told Patrick Queen, make a mistake at 100 miles per hour and we'll be happy, when he came into the league. I'm not sure that was really the correct call for Patrick Queen coming into the league. I think he got himself out of position all the time. Daniel Falele, indecisiveness, and you know what I mean. I'm not even going to try and say that word again. he gets out of position by his own indecision, or he makes no block through his own indecision more often. And that's been really the frustration with me. So, this was a good game for him. And I at a C minus, not a terrible grade by my system. It's way above the replacement level. By the way, he'd have to be a full grade level lower than he was for me to say he's at the replacement level. Let me just be very clear about that. So, I think there's a lot of positive to take from this game, and his general level of play has been probably just slightly lower than where it was in this game. Certainly not a whole grade level lower, but just slightly lower than it has been in this game. All right, I'll move on and talk about Roger Rosengarten. 56 plays, 49 blocks. He missed 3. He had some pressure events. He gave up 2.5 pressures. He gave up a third of a sack. We talked about earlier, there's a 3-way shared sack on the only one that was charged to the offensive line. He had half of that false start shared with Voorhees that we talked about earlier. 0.73 was his raw score. After adjustment, he gets up to a C+. Miles Murphy, a pretty good opponent that he's facing. And obviously he did pretty well. So did Asai on the other edge. They're not Hendrickson, or they're not Dunlap, and who was opposite Dunlap years ago, when Dunlap was usually the real tall guy who played opposite the right tackle, and they had somebody playing opposite left tackle who was really good. I'm trying to remember who it was. Oh, okay. I've lost it too. But anyway, 3 level 2 blocks, 2 pancakes, 1 out of 2 on polls and 1 highlight for Rosengarten. Anything to say about Roger before we move on, Jake?
Yeah, what a weird case this guy is. I mean, he the tape that he puts out never really seemed to look as good as like how he actually statistically does. But I mean, if you're looking statistically, he's been solid for the most part of the year. I mean, he's been tasked with a lot of pretty tough assignments. My biggest gripe on him right now, and I said it earlier in this episode, and I think last as well. It's been at least 3 times I've seen this year where the defense has run a simple stunt, and he is just not recognizing it. The first sack on Jackson. I mean, Falalele did a decent job passing it off to him. He probably could have got a little bit more off of the tackle that was twisting outside, but Rosengarten just got completely committed to the edge defender, despite the edge not coming hard, and just did not help Falalele out at all. So that guy just the defensive tackle was able just to squeeze right between them, and that's been a consistent issue that until they get that resolved. I foresee teams continuing to do that. But with that said, I mean, that's probably been the one of the only 2 points that I've really had against him. The other one, I mean, he has been pushed around a little bit against some of the better edge defenders that we've played, but we've played a lot of them. So, there's a little bit of grace to have there. Overall, I think he's been solid this year. I mean, he's a good right tackle. I wouldn't ever even conceive putting him against, on the blind side, but
Yeah, good
he's
point.
a pretty solid right tackle.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't think he's headed to left tackle at any point in his career, or if he did, it would be a fairly substantial uptick in where he is right now. But hopefully, he's not a guy like Orlando Brown who just feels like I have to play left tackle and feels like he has to leave the Ravens to do it if they come up with the right guy. That right guy could be Vincent. I'm certainly hopeful of that. You mentioned one other thing. I don't want to spend too long on this because we got to move the show along a little bit. But the matching of depth would be a point I'd go to as really needs to be a better point of coaching emphasis. The tackle and guard, the underneath player on a stunt is the guy who sets the pick, who goes between 2 players, tries to create effectively either a 1-man half block immediately off the snap or a 2-man half block where a peel is required to make that a 1.5-man block. But the thing is totally botched by the offensive line when they can't match depth at all, and it usually can create a big opportunity for the underneath player or the looper. Could be either, but can create a jailbreak out of that. But the underneath player is often the guy on a stunt who has even the bigger advantage, and matching that depth is something that the Ravens just have not been very good at. And it's been a case at guard center. It's been a case at guard tackle on both sides. It's not any one particular one of the gaps. It's just they've had general issues matching depth.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think a lot of times, I mean, just very quickly, I think that oftentimes contributes to a lot of those pocket collapses as well. They're just not spacing properly. A lot of times they're not really handing off defenders very well. So a lot of times we're not getting direct pressure on Jackson, but the pocket itself is just squeezing way more often than it really should.
All right. Well, now I know everybody wants to hear about Emory Jones. I'm going to go through quickly, and I know you, Jacob, you scored this separately, so I want to hear your thoughts on this one as well. But I'll start off 15 plays, 13 blocks. I have him missing 2. He's got an enormous offensive holding penalty, and it's 5 points in a 15 play outing, and you scored him 16 times because you've got the holding play as a separate play. It's not a scored snap directly for me, but it is a scored snap. It's a -5 to his overall. He got 8 points out of a possible 15, which is 0.53. Now he doesn't get a grade under 20 snaps. It wasn't a terrible game in terms of technique. I think he did some good things. He had a nice highlight block where I think he blocked 2 guys at the line of scrimmage, if I recall. It wasn't even a elevation to level 2. I got to go back on that to find out what it was. Actually, I'll let you do it. I'll let you, because I know you'll know where it is. But the offensive holding is a big deal, and I can't come up with a reason why the individual offensive lineman doesn't get the entire share of the blame on a penalty. I can't come up with a reason. It is true. Sometimes when a run goes outside, there's a little bit higher risk for a guard on a penalty. But that means that there's guards in the league who do it, and there's guards in the league who don't, and you got to be judged as for what your results are. And unfortunately, that play cost him, what would have been otherwise, I think, a pretty good game from what he was able to put on tape.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, ultimately with the penalties, you even if you get beat, you want to give your guy an opportunity. Just make sure you have high effort and follow up on the block as much as you can. I agree. Emery had a decent game. I'm most excited for the technique that he showed. I don't know if the game itself was outstanding, as you said. There wasn't any like highlight events, but he has the definite hand placement was amazing. And he did do really well with his footwork and getting his butt into the gap when he was supposed to. But overall, it's good signs. Like I said, I think it's something they can develop from.
Okay, I'm back. Sorry. Corey Bullock got 3 snaps at the very end of the game, made 2 of his blocks as I scored it. His first 3 snaps at center. And one little thing that was a little bit bothersome, Noteboom came in for the very last play, replacing Stanley. It looked like to me that likely kicked Stanley in the elbow. So it probably what do they call it? Funny bone. He probably kicked him and he had to leave the game. I hope there's no serious injury there. I don't expect that it would be, but he was kind of writhing around after that play, and obviously he wasn't in there all of a sudden when they cut back the line. Okay. All right, great. Now let's move on. I think we've got to most people's questions here, which is good. Let's move on and talk about some individual skill position players. And Jacob, you're the guest. Who would you like to talk about first?
I mean, it's hard not to talk about Likely. I mean, as unfortunate as the fumble was, it was nice to finally see his involvement when he's been, for the most part, pretty absent for the year.
Yeah, great game for Likely, making himself open. I thought he did a really good job on some of the extended plays, and there were a couple more this game than there had been of making himself available. And Lamar's good game under pressure is largely a function of having some nice throws to Likely there that were done as extended plays. So some positives there. The fumble is unbelievably awful, and it really reverts a lot of what was good about the game, reverses. But he was they need Isaiah Likely to come through in these last 5 games and be an offensive weapon, and this game gives me some hope that he will be. All right,
Yeah, no, for sure.
I'll move on. I want to talk about Keaton Mitchell. And we talked in the first episode about the pass to him on the left sideline that was underthrown and may have been a lost, 25, 30-yard play. Andrews was out in front of him with a very nice block, it appeared. He had one man to beat kind of in the middle of the field. He was nowhere near him, which, first of all, is going to give him time to set him up, give him time to make him miss. And then there wasn't a lot of traffic otherwise in position to make a play on Mitchell. It had all the looks of a very long play for Mitchell if that block had held up from Andrews, which it looked like it was going to. So just tragic that he was not able to put that ball on target. One of the things I've noticed this summer a lot was not only his ability to cut, but his transition from catch to run has been very good. And it's just a shame we didn't get to see that on that play.
Yeah, I mean, and let's not let that overshadow the amazing run that he had. Pretty much the naked toss, just absolutely beat everyone to the edge for the eventual score. I mean, I've been a big. We've had discussions on Reddit about this where I am questioning what's kind of going on with the chemistry with Henry and the line and everything. And it just seems like the limited snaps that Keaton has gotten, granted, most of them are off tackle, but he's just able to get to that line just a hair faster, and being a little bit smaller, just making a little more use of the gaps that are made by the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I thought also on this play, it was kind of had elements of a counter to it because it's kind of a back away play, but he took a half step to the left, then moved right to accept that pitch. And he had the edge beaten. I don't remember if it was Murphy or who it was on that right edge on that play. But as soon as he was even with him, he's even, he is so far leaving, it's not even funny when he's Keaton Mitchell. And the fact that he was in that much space is as much a function of that initial step that he took to deceive the rest of the line of scrimmage, the end guy, frankly, on the line of scrimmage, as it was any other block or anything else. There was a great block downfield by Flowers. Don't want to minimize that in any way. But Mitchell basically had that touchdown as soon as that edge defender, was Murphy or whoever it was, took one step in the wrong direction. It was over. All right, I think it's your turn.
I mean, we talked about it last episode a lot, but I just, we got to talk about, with Bateman and everything. It's just what is his future? Like you said, he's going to be with us for a long time, bar some type of, trade made or anything like that. And it's just his involvement needs to be more. They need to find a way to do it. With that said, I do feel like a big proponent of this game's passing game being better is the respect that he commands versus some of the backups, even if the backups this year, I mean, really have flashed more. I mean, you're talking about some of these big plays that the depth guys have had. And then obviously, like it is concerning to see Hopkins at this point have more yards, more targets and stuff like that, who's supposed to kind of be more of a guy that comes in for certain roles. But yeah, I think there's a lot of value brought by Bateman, but again, we're not seeing that production, and that's problematic when it's supposed to be a guy that's on the field 60% of the time.
Yeah, it is problematic. I think they're going to look at the film of this game and see two plays in particular that we mentioned among the 10 missed throws by Lamar in the first episode, and they're going to say those were big missed opportunities to get the ball to Rashad. And one, he had the corner stacked on the outside on the right sideline, and there was an opportunity for him to go to a straight vertical or 9 route, or he could have gone to the corner route as well, where there's no way that Hill could have gotten in position to make a play on that ball. Ball didn't even the bucket was very big to drop it into. Let's put it that way. And there was a good chance that Hill was going to do something stupid like run through Bateman, even if the ball's underthrown a little bit. So, you have a really good opportunity on that play. He came back for a ball when Lamar was under trouble, and that play may have been too far gone, but Osai had him kind of running towards the right sideline. It was late in the game, about 5 minutes left after the Travis Jones fumble recovery gave the Ravens that one last chance. And he ran to the right, and there was a chance to hit Bateman in there for about a 15-yard gain, maybe. Bateman did a good job of coming back towards the quarterback on the play, and it looked like something where Lamar could have found him, but he threw the ball out of bounds. Obviously, didn't really have time to see Bateman on that play. I think when they look at that, I hope it's a kind of a wake up call that Lamar needs to get Bateman back involved in the offense. And in fact, I think they need to scheme him into the offense more in some ways that build some more trust again. I hate that they're in this position again, because last year Bateman set the all-time record for a Ravens wide receiver with 10.5 yards per target. I mean, there shouldn't be anything required left in terms of trust building exercises, and yet it feels like we're at that point again. All right, let me move on to a similar player is Tez Walker in this game, because he stacked the corner twice in this game very effectively. Once on the left sideline. The other time it wasn't really a stacking exercise. He just had the guy beat largely because Geno Stone had fallen down on the play, but he got behind the defense twice very effectively. The play where he had it stacked was just a very badly underthrown ball by Lamar, so really unfortunate. Dax Hill, because of the underthrow, was able to get his hand into the catch point, and as they went to the ground, he pulled it free. That was unfortunate. That should have been an easy 6 on that play. And the other was the early play where Lamar threw a fastball to him. It was just high, and he leapt for the ball. At the game, I thought he probably had a chance to catch that ball. Looking at it on the tape, I think it would have been an outstanding grab if he'd been able to make it. It was just more or less out of his reach. But again, it was one of the throws Lamar left on the field. I don't come away thinking anything less of Tez Walker from what he did in this game. In fact, I'm thinking, boy, do they need to get him out on the field more with what he could do to the cornerback to get him stacked.
Yeah, and that's funny. That last point that you're making is, and some of the groups that I'm in, that's one of the big contentions is that some folks probably would actually like to see him on the field a little bit more than Bateman at this point, just to see kind of what he's capable. I mean, because coming into this, I mean, he pretty much had essentially a perfect, target ratio or catch percentage, I guess you would say, for tons of yards. I mean, he was averaging like 22 yards a reception, had multiple touchdowns. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot to look at him and be like, wow, there's potential here. Just got to be careful with those small sample sizes. And like I said, one of the reasons I kind of brought up the point is that, maybe he's not showing enough versatility across the field that, they're not willing to put him out there in more snaps. But you can't look at what he's done at this point and say like, wow, he's definitely bringing an aspect, over the top at the very least that can potentially be exploitable against defenses.
Mm-hmm. All right, great points. So it's your turn again.
I mean, how about Kohler? I mean, unsung hero of the offense. Kohler's been really involved in this year. I was dead set on keeping Likely no matter what, regardless of what happened with Andrews, because I wasn't sure about Kohler's availability to contribute to the offense outside of the occasional, inclusion of run blocking. But I mean, he's just been that kind of ninja in the night with a lot of his plays, where he just kind of seeps out. No one's really expecting it, and he's really shown a level of athleticism that I wasn't expecting from him and haven't really seen in the past consistently. So I mean, I feel a little bit better about our tight end situation next year, knowing that he's a potential possibility of stepping up and seeing what role he could have. But for the most part, it's just a pleasant surprise. I mean, he's probably been one of the only like consistently negative people I've seen on the offense throughout the whole year. I mean, nothing comes to mind from him. And I can't remember what play it was, but he had an absolute monster block on one of Henry's huge runs last week. So very pleasant surprise. I mean, he's really moved me on being dead set on keeping Likely, especially if Andrews for whatever reason was gone. So I've been really pleased with him, and he had a quiet game this game, but he's definitely worth mentioning.
All right. Well, I agree. I thought that was good, and getting the ball out to him for 17 yards on the very first play of the game. First of all, great that the Ravens can get that done. Kind of reminded me of Vontae Leach starting off Super Bowl 47 with a catch for 8 yards on a route he hadn't run the whole year, pretty much. I mean, and Cole, they so rarely throw him the football, and they obviously that's a scripted play. They schemed to get him the ball, and he found a great spot. And if you could do it once like that, doesn't it make sense that could work more? As a guy who works from an inline position there, you'd think he'd most of the time anyway. That most of the time he doesn't flex. He's going to get lost a lot of the time, or he's going to have a linebacker responsible for him. And that's a great combination of factors if you can get him anywhere between level 2 and level 3. All right, I want to talk a little bit about Ricard. I guess I'm happy with the way Ricard's season is going. Generally speaking, last week was kind of the high point, and then he comes back, and some of it's game script, of course, but he had a remarkably low snap total. I've got to remind myself whether it was 11 or 14 or what it was, but it was extremely low. And let's see, Ricard had 11 snaps in the game, so he only played 18% of the snaps. That's a number that does not bode well for the Ravens. Whether or not it was the right thing, and Ricard was in there as monster pass blocker when he's in there, by the way. But if he's spending 4 of his snaps pass blocking, that means he only had 7 run blocks the entire game. And it might have even been less than that. I didn't actually check, but that's not a lot of Ricard usage. And I think Cincinnati is a team where they didn't force them to play point of attack football. They could do more of the kind of the outside zone that they wanted to do, which doesn't necessarily include Ricard, but it also is. You've been having some success with him. This wouldn't have been the week I'd have completely sat him down the way they did.
Yeah, I'm not sure where Ricard fits into Monken's scheme for the most part. We've seen some changes to give credit to Monken over the last few weeks. Just trying some different things, trying to get try to facilitate a better opportunity set, especially for the line, by not having these long drawn out plays. But I feel like it's clear for the most part, Monken likes to be aggressive. He likes having those vertical options available. And, putting Ricard in a lot of times can be, somewhat of a tell in those situations. I'm completely against it for the most part. I love Ricard. I mean, I think the value that he brings for obviously his cost and effectiveness is massive, but you have to commit to a certain style that whether the coaching decides it's personnel or if they decide it's just not the route that they want to go, he's kind of the odd man out, I feel like, for what we try to do on offense often, which is unfortunate. I mean, the good news is that he's not a huge sunk cost, but at the same time, I would put Ricard up there as one of the most valuable players in the league for what he does. Now, if you want to use him for that, that's what it comes down to. Otherwise, I mean, he's pretty much a semi-expensive, pass protector in the backfield. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I'd like to see him on the field more. But the other hand, I think people oftentimes thinks that he was out there a ton, even with Roman. If I remember correctly, he typically sat around 45%. So it wasn't like he was there, every single play. It's not like, the 1990s I formations or anything. So he's definitely still got usage. I just don't know where he fits in potentially with 80% of what Monken wants to do. But I still love him as a player. I mean, he's absolutely amazing. I feel like, he obviously got paid a good contract considering where fullbacks are in the league at this point. And he's not a use check or anything like that, but he just brings a lot of value that we're not really capitalizing on for whatever reason.
You expect him to be back in 2026?
I would say yes in the beginning of the year, because I thought that we'd still continue with kind of how we've done it over the years, but it's a toss up for me. I think if we continue to struggle through the rest of the year offensively, they may consider essentially taking a new direction next year and implementing kind of a change of pace for what Monken wants to do. But if we pick it back up and for whatever reason the offense starts firing all cylinders and it's like the beginning of the year and we're very vertical, I don't think so. I mean, again, he's not going to be expensive, but it's still money spent somewhere that you're not going to use.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the money at all, because he'll make the vet minimum and then he'll make some VSB, so that's non-cap dollars you spend on him. You could potentially put that on another player. Could be Tylan Wallace. That's money he would get. Wallace has had kind of a questionable year for being really excited about. He's the guy you keep. But the other possibilities, I mean, they've got Lucas Scott on the practice squad, and I don't know what they think of him right now. They're obviously keeping him under wraps for this year, but is he picking up the position in the Ravens way at fullback in a way that he kind of takes the lead next camp? Maybe Ricard's still around, maybe he's not in camp, and then he's the guy who starts the next regular season. I really don't know, and they may even decide neither of those guys is the guy we want. That it's too far down the road in terms of Ricard's age and injury history to take the chance on another season. So they really have to start with the new fullback. They probably will still have a fullback as part of their offense, because I think it's a DNA thing for the Ravens. I don't think they're changing away from it. So anyway, I'll be interested to see how that plays out. I got one more question from the mailbag I want to try and hit up on. Jake Hogberg, thank you. Would be curious as to what Henry's yards per carry is in between the tackles compared to outside the tackles. There have to be large differences. Don't understand why they don't run more toss sweeps with Henry. I actually just looked this up, kind of surprising results. It's out there on PFF if you want to look at it, is his runs by gap from outside the D gap, which is outside the tight end, on the left side, all the way to the right D gap. They have it for all 8 of those gaps there. And he's actually been the best in the middle of the field, going either side of the center and actually to the right of Fa'alele, between Fa'alele and Rosengarten. Those have been his best places at 5.1, 6.4, and 5.5 yards per attempt specifically. The outside, he hasn't been nearly as good this year. Left end, 4.4, but he's also got 2 of his 3 fumbles going there. Left tackle, 3.1. Right tackle, 4.1. Right end, 4.5. So, the fact that they haven't run as many tosses, well, there's a small sample size, relatively speaking, but he's still got 43 runs off the left side and 47 runs off the right side to go with even more in the middle of the field. Looks like about 107 in the middle of the field. That's a lot of plays to be able to look at and see a difference in yards per carry of that much. So, I'm not sure that the Ravens are wrong in terms of what they're doing. I love that jet toss play. When it worked last year, it was the most beautiful thing they did offensively, probably the whole year. But I don't know. And I appreciate the question, Jake. Any comments from you, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes touches on what we talked about with yards before contact versus yards after. Obviously, depending on where you get your resources from, we found out that there is a little bit of a disparity. But I really do think that it's not surprising to me, mostly because I think that people see him getting tackled for a loss or at the line, and he does have a pretty decent, what they call like the stuff rate or whatever, where he's getting either no yards or tackled behind the line, but he just he's always needed time to build up as a runner, and you do get that off the edge, but it needs to be something that's downhill, not necessarily like the sweep, in my opinion. So he's a downhill runner at the end of the day, and I think that they're still going to get the most push up through the center of the line, despite what people think. They're not getting substantial push off of the line of scrimmage. They're not opening these really large holes, but what they are doing is that they're allowing that consistent yardage to happen. It's not a lot, but it's consistent. When he goes off the edge, we talked about it earlier, in years prior, he was getting hit at the line of scrimmage off the edge, but he was, meme worthy stiff arming these cornerbacks, and that's just not happening this year. So a lot of that production is probably lost on him getting tackled, on the first or second guy there, that he wasn't having that happen in previous years. And that's where the disparity, in my opinion, I haven't had a chance to obviously look deep into it, but that's more than likely, in my opinion, where it's coming from, is that he's not getting any more or less yards potentially last year in the same scenario. It's just he's not extending the plays as much. So his best bet for the most part is up the center, where he can at least get some free yards from the line's push, and then the rest of the work's done by him.
It's great points, by the way. And one of the reasons that Jacob is on this show is because of a really good conversation we had about the differences between the Pro Football Reference yards before contact and yards after contact number, and comparing that to the PFF yards before contact, yards after contact. They use 2 different services. Obviously, PFF does their own measurements of where first contact occurs and whatnot. I talked to them about it. They said they measure first contact by first contact, and it's any first contact, probably including a touch. The PFR stats come from Sport Radar. It's an organization I don't know anything about. I did not try to contact them directly to ask them this question, but that disparity is really worth investigating to a deeper degree. The point I was making here is that that's the kind of conversation that gets me interested about having somebody on the show. And Jacob, I really appreciate. I thought this show's gone very well, and I appreciate how much effort you've you put into watching the games, and your knowledge, particularly of offensive line play, is at a good level for this. That I thought, this is excellent. Other people out there, if you have this kind of knowledge, I want to have you on the show. I want to have you, talk to you about football on the show. That's what this is intended to be. We have the film study shorts are for this. Happened to have an opening, and Jacob just jumped right on it immediately, which is great. And this has really worked out. But it builds. This is how I develop new people to do the show with. Is by having people who I get in a conversation with on Reddit or on any of the boards or just on Twitter, whatever it might be. But anyway, we have to call the show here as well, Jacob, which I really appreciate you coming on. Tell folks if they want to have that conversation with you, how they get it started.
Yeah, please. Like I said, I'm most time I'm on Reddit. My handle's Spitan89, SBITAN 89. You'll definitely see me perusing through the Ravens subreddit, especially on Ken's posts. But yeah, again, I really appreciate the time to come on here. I was very excited. I wish it wasn't so last minute. I probably would have had a little bit more, actual analysis and opinion on stuff. It's a lot of it off the cuff, but and it's just been great. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we'll definitely make sure we do it again. Other folks out there, thanks so much for listening as always. If you want to do something nice for the show, you can write us a 5-star 50-word review on your favorite podcast platform, or you can tell that one additional person who hasn't found this show yet how to go to the website, play it directly. We're looking for codgers here, people who don't necessarily know how to use a podcast or even load one on their phone, but could just play the thing off the website. That's fine as well. Anyway, thanks very much for listening. Jacob, thanks again for coming on.
Appreciate it.
And we'll talk to you next time on Film Study.